We've all seen a terrible name, whether it's a kid or a business or a church or a youth group, whatever it is. We know there's some rough ones out there. But what's even easier to do is have an uninspired name, one that just kind of gets forgotten. And see it happen all the time. I spend a lot of time working with churches and youth groups and doing logo work, but the process of naming something and doing a good job of it and having kind of fresh, unexpected ideas that stand out in people's mind, that process or that recipe looks pretty similar regardless of what you're naming. What I want to do today is take a quick second to walk you through a process that I've used for my own stuff and for clients of mine and found some success with it. Hope it helps you too. So what we'll be looking at is basically a workbook here. And like I said, you can really fill in the blank of church with whatever you want to. You could have how to name your dog here, but again, the principles still apply. Basically, the advantages of a good name are you want it to be memorable. You want to stand out in somebody's mind. And obviously, the considerations are different if you're naming a local business or something that needs to serve people in a specific geographic place, or if you're naming something that, you know, maybe there's no people coming in the doors of your thing, but you've got to do something online. Considerations are a little bit different, but in every case, you want to show up when somebody searches for you, whether it's on a social media platform or on Google. And you also want to use the name as a springboard for the mission or vision that you're trying to fulfill. What you don't want to do is just walk in and say, like, yeah, we kind of just picked it because we liked it, right? Ideally, it ties in with why you exist. And so if somebody asks you about it or it comes up in conversation, it's then an immediate inroad to sharing about why you're doing the thing in the first place. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to use my company, Bright Coal, as the example here. I recently went through a naming process with another organization, but I didn't feel comfortable using their stuff in the talk today, so we'll be using mine. The first thing that you're going to do in this process is develop some ground rules. How will you know if you found the right name or the thing is the right fit until you said, hey, the name needs to do these things here? So what must be true about the name is the first step. And that's really has to do with like practical applications, some of the like just nuts and bolts of the thing. So for Bright Coal, I said it needs to be easy to say and spell. I want it to be like 2 words. I knew it'd be really tough to think of one word. And a lot of times the one word companies are made up words. And then I wanted the .com to be available. That's not always something that's super important, but it mattered to me. And because I'm doing logo work for churches, I wanted like a biblical tie-in that wasn't churchy or cheesy or like kind of just corny, right? I wanted it to kind of be like under the radar and again, tie in with the mission if somebody asked. What should it feel like? So we talked about like kind of the practical side of it. This is more of, a little bit more of the squishy like branding side of it. What tone, what emotions do we want to evoke with the name? So when somebody says the thing, regardless of whether they've seen your website, seen any of your stuff, what kind of comes to mind when they're looking at those things? For me, again, I'd never wanted to be a huge agency. I wanted to be small shop with probably just myself, maybe a handful of other people down the road, but really wanted it to have a small boutique craft feel. Like I wanted it to be a little bit weird, a little bit designy. A little bit disruptive. I did not want this to be like a safe place to come to get your logo done. I wanted to push the envelope a little bit, and I want that to come through in the name. As important as what benchmarks we do want to hit is what things like this is a total out. Like if the logo if the name does this thing, it's a loser and it's like removed from consideration. For me, anything that feels churchy. If it's too many letters, I don't care if it's 2 words, but it's 17 characters long, I'm out. And then the other is my name. My last name is Whiting. It's 50-50, like coin flip on people who know how to say or spell it the right way the first time. So I said, I want to like sidestep that whole conversation because the first time I interact with somebody, I don't want it to be, oh no, it's actually White. Like I don't want to I would rather talk about the mission and the vision for the company, not my name and myself. So we've got kind of like our set of rules here established and thinking about like, okay, like I'll know it when I see it because I've written down, this is what a good name should look like, right? So now we're going to move into some of the just like development process. And this is, and like most people don't do that step we just talked about. They just jump straight into like writing down names, which is perfect. You've probably already done that. If you're in a naming process right now, you're ready for step 4, but the first step of actually putting pen to paper here. So I call this a brain dump sprint. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but you guys can download this document that I'm looking at the link below. But in this brain dump, you're basically like, you're not editing, you're not qualifying the ideas, you're just getting everything down. And if you guys have a group of people working through this process together, it's best to do all of these steps together. But this is what people traditionally think of. They think, oh, we're going to have one big meeting, we're going to write out a bunch of stuff and vote on the best one. Really, that's kind of this step. And I think it's served best with, in concert with some of the other steps here. But yeah, you're going to really just crank out all the names that you can think of. They don't have to be good. They don't have to be super different, like adding, plurals or like slight variations or tweaks to names that you like. Just get as many down as possible. If you've got like 30 to 50 in one sitting, like that's a fantastic start, fantastic way to go. And again, we're not judging whether or not these things fit, whether or not they're great. We're just getting everything you've already kind of been ruminating on down on paper. For this next step, it's called a mind map. If you're not familiar with the concept, basically you've got like a thought. So for me, I'm a designer. I wanted something disruptive. I wanted something that tied in with the Bible. And there's a couple of like little starting points that you've got, right? And then you can draw branches off from there of other ideas that are connected to that, or other things that just kind of get sparked from that conversation. And you can really keep expanding those bubbles out as far as you want. And this is a good one because rather than you staring at the blank page of all the possible names, this one kind of forces you to sit and think for a second about maybe some underdeveloped categories that could be a fit for you, but you haven't really unpacked all the possible options there yet. So you can do step 4 and step 5 in one sitting if you want to, or you could break these up and do them at separate times. But I found they are very great ways to develop a pretty big bank of possible names, like right off the rip. Now, the next part, step 6 down here, is actually what most people skip, or they do it in not the most like strategic way. But basically, so like we'll write out all these names and then really just think about that original list for a long time. In this process, I'm recommending that you keep all the names that you dumped out at first, but now like spend 10 minutes every day developing additional names. And usually this is the magic part where the right name shows up. So you'll have, you might be walking your dog or just kind of like in the gym, not really thinking super hard about it, not trying to like force out the right name, and it'll just come to you. And it might be springboarded off of one of the other names on the list. But just take the time, do the exercise, just write 10 more names, add them to the list, add them to the list. So once you've got a ton of names, you then identify the contenders. And you probably already do this process automatically where you like get really excited about one name and kind of put it in a special place on the list. But if you haven't done that already, after a couple of weeks or a couple of days of doing this, then you'll go back through your list and say, all right, here's my list of, requirements that we wrote in steps 1 through 3. And then you'll kind of weigh the names against that. Some of these names may jump off the page when you write and you're like, oh, this is it. This is it. And then you get back to it a couple of days later and you're like, that's not it. Or you're like, oh, it actually doesn't match up with one of the goals that we really need it to. So we got to reconsider or fix that piece of it. And then there's other times where it doesn't feel like super sexy or like jump off the page when you initially write it. But after you simmer on it a few days, you're like, no, this is actually like the responsible choice. Like this is the perfect name for my thing. So you want to really give things a few days to soak and like ruminate before you go through this process. But you'll identify a few contenders and weigh them against everything that you established in 1 through 3. So for me, I wrote out a bunch of different, like you can see in my brain dump here, step 4, pretty terrible names. Like some of these are rough and like way off course, but you're not like evaluating your quality as a human or someone's ability to name something in this step. It's just getting them out. Then in the mind map, you can see over here in the Bible category, I was looking at burning bush and some of the Old Testament, like cool visual moments. And then in my writing out 10 names a day, that's actually when I landed on the live coal and white coal and then bright coal and started feeling pretty good about it. And then I measured it against all of my requirements and it met that. And this last one here has some little nuance to it. So I want to unpack it. And it's basically, you've checked it against your list, but you probably got a like target audience or a group of people that you're trying to appeal to with your thing. Again, whether it's a business or a youth group or a church or a coffee shop, you want all your stuff to make sense for a specific group of people. And I asked some people, hey, what do you think about Bright Coal? Do you think that's a good name? And I even unpacked some of the story for them. And some people are like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And some people are like, you just had to tell me a 5-minute story for me to like the name at all. Like, does that make it a good name? So I got some mixed feedback, but this is where like, you can't focus group everything, whether it's your logo or your name. Some of these things just are kind of birthed out of your vision for it. So you got to make some brave choices sometimes, but what you're looking for when you ask these people is like weird, unexpected answers. So I'm okay with, I don't love it or whatever. But if somebody says, that really makes me think that you guys like are like neo-Nazis, right? Or something like crazy out of left field, like kind of a blind spot that you weren't expecting. Or that makes me hungry. I thought this was a food place. Like those are things that you want to keep an eye. Like if you hear that from every single person, that's something to consider, right? That's what I've got here. Again, the link to this is down in the description. And then at the end of this thing, you've got blank pages you guys can print out and do it for yourself. Guys, I hope this was valuable. I hope it helps you the next time you or someone needs to name something. Shoot them a link to this video. I'd love to help them out. Love you guys. If this was helpful for you, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Love y'all. Adios.